performance. And the last bit is the evidence need to be valid. And here it says that the evidence must be relevant to the competency being assessed. And therefore, it must measure what is intended to measure. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our series of videos understanding CBET. We started looking at our fourth principle, and that is assessment of learning outcomes. So, in our previous videos, we introduced the fourth principle, where we started looking at introduction bit on what assessment is, what is the importance of conducting assessments. And in our today's video, we want to focus on a continuation on assessment of learning outcomes. So today we're going to look at methods of assessments. But before we continue, I want to thank everyone who is supporting the channel. For those who have subscribed, our challenge is still there to reach 200 subscribers. So thank you for your support. Let's continue to subscribe, like, and share these videos. So let's dive into our discussion today on method of assessments. And when you're talking about method of assessment, what are we talking about? So these are ways that you use to collect evidence of a learner's performance. When you're talking about collection of evidence, these means there are a variety of methods that can be used to assess a learner skills, knowledge, and attitude. And it can be used to measure performance in variety of settings. And that brings me, what are evidence? Evidence are information that supports a claim or an argument. And here you're saying that if you have to say a learner is competent or not yet competent, then you need to support that with evidence. So you want to say that evidence can be used to prove or disapprove uh, a learner's performance. So basically, that is what method of assessment is. And the continuation is there are varieties or there are various ways of collecting information about a learner's performance. But you're also saying that only a limited number of ways allows collection of quality information that helps in making accurate judgment about performance. So there are various ways of collecting information, especially when you're talking about collection of evidence. And some of these could be about performance assessment. Here we are looking at learners able to demonstrate their skills, knowledge by performing a task. You can as well look at other ways like written assessments, could include essays, reports, and other forms of written assessments, and other ways like oral assessments, and of course many other ways. So some of these ways will allow collection of quality information. And when we are talking about quality information, we are saying that we should use holistic assessment methods, not just relying on one particular assessment method. So when you're using holistic assessment method, is the surest ways of giving quality information. When we're talking about quality information, information that is accurate, uh, reliable, complete, timely, and relevant. So basically, those are different ways that you can use to collect evidence that will lead to quality information, and so that you're able to make accurate judgment or decision about a learner's performance. Bring me what are some of these considerations that when you're talking about method of assessments. So you're saying that in choosing from the many ways that you have mentioned of assessments, you need to consider two things. One is assessment purpose, and number two, you need to factor or consider context or which you are going to assess. So probably you need to look at these two things. When you're talking about assessment purpose, what are we talking about? Assessment purpose basically is the reason why an assessment is being conducted. So why are you doing that assessment? What is your intention? It could be to measure learning outcomes. It could be to make decisions about a learner performance, or it could mean to provide feedback or to report progress. So basically, those are probably the reason. Of course, there are many others of assessment purpose and why we conduct assessment. When I talk about context, here we are saying that assessment context is the environment in which an assessment is conducted. So basically, that's what assessment context is all about. And you realize we conduct assessment in different contexts, and some of these contexts have been identified in our occupational standard and in our curriculum. So it's always good to refer for each element what are the suggested assessment contexts that we need to consider during assessment. Bringing to a point, what is the importance of collecting evidence? One is to measure learners' progress, and this means that when you're talking about evidence, it can be used to track learners' progress over time and to identify areas where learners need additional support. Number two is to ensure that learners are meeting the required competencies. And this means that when you're collecting evidence, it can be used to assess learners' competency. And that will ensure that they are meeting the requirements of a training program or occupation. So basically, you have to collect evidence to ensure that learners are meeting the required competency. Another aspect or importance of collecting evidence is to provide learners with feedback. And we did talk about anytime you conduct assessments, you need to provide feedback. And here we are saying that evidence can be used to provide learners with feedback on their performance, and that will help them identify areas where they need to improve. And basically, this is why we conduct assessments. It could be one of the reasons why, purpose why we conduct assessments. And of course, as we move on, we'll see the importance of giving feedback to our learners. The last aspect is to improve quality of our training programs. So when you collect evidence, it can be used to identify areas where training programs can be improved. You can as well even measure your training methods. So basically, of course, there are many other importance it's important that in every assessment that we conduct, we need to collect evidence. So we're going to look at evidence in depth as we move on. Bring me to what are these assessment contexts? And to remind ourselves that assessment context is the environment in which an assessment is conducted. And basically, there are three assessment contexts rather, that you can use to conduct your assessments. One is institutional. So basically, here we're looking at training institutions. It can as well be on the job, and that means that the learner's workplace, or it could be in work placements. And you are talking about during uh, industrial attachments. So basically, those are the three environments in which an assessment can be conducted. And what are some of these methods that we can use when you're talking about assessment context? So we're going to highlight just a few of them. One is you can use observation, and depending on the assessment context, you can employ that technique of assessment. You can use oral questioning. Again, you can see where it's applicable when it comes to assessment context. Another method of assessment could be through projects, and you're going to see some of these where they're applicable. Another aspect is you can use written assessments, which can take different forms. Another aspect is on job assessment, and you can as well solicit for supervisor reports as part of assessment method that you can use. The other bit is trainee presentation, and this could happen during CBET sessions. They're able to present in one of the assignments, or demonstrate formation of a product, or many others. And the last bit is you can use case studies as a method of assessment. Because there are many other methods that you can employ to assess learning outcomes in different environments. So if you break it down to what are the purpose and which method can you use in different assessment contexts, when you start with the institution, with the majority of ways that we can employ in collecting evidence, and of course during assessment, it can happen. You need to choose methods that are appropriate to that context. So let's look at which method can you use in our institutions. So in the context as an institution, you can employ observation of performance in a simulated situations. So observation is very key, and majorly why we choose that method could be to assess process application. Again, that is determined by the level of your performance criteria. You can assess practical skills, and of course, you can assess skills in producing a product. So you need to look at your performance criteria, and then probably you want to make a judgment if it is a process PC or it is a product PC, or both, and then see which method of assessment is applicable. And some of the tools you can use is, of course, observation checklist, and at times you can take video cameras as part of your evidence. So you'll be looking at portfolio of evidence, and it's some of the things that you can use and keep as part of a collection of evidence. There are other techniques or method that you can use for assessment like oral questioning to assess underpinning knowledge and skills. Again, this will be guided by your occupational standard and your curriculums. And the tool you can use for oral questioning could be a one-on-one interview, or it could be a group interview. You also have projects, case studies with relevant checklists, oral questions. You can have written question or scenarios to assess different components like practical skills, underpinning knowledge, also able to assess life skills like assess problem solving skills. So basically, when in your institution, you can employ some of these methods. Of course, there are many others. On job, you can apply again different methods. One, you can solicit for supervisor reports when you want to assess practical skills. And the evidence or tool you can use that is written reports, could be performance appraisals. You can as well use on the job assessments when you want to again to assess practical skills. And here you want to look at the finished products checklist, mentorship reports, or supervisor or team leader report. You can as well employ observation techniques or methods to assess application of process skills or application of knowledge. So again, the tools you require here are observation checklist, mentors report, team leaders report. And on work placements, talking about industrial attachments, you can rely on supervisor reports to assess practical skills. They will require written reports and mentoring tool. So we'll be talking about mentoring tool in our subsequent series of videos. You can as well employ self-assessment by the trainee. So trainees can assess themselves so that you're able to assess and reinforce knowledge and practical skills. And here we'll need observation checklists as part of the evidence, self-assessment reports, and the mentoring tool. Of course, on the job assessment by you as a trainer or facilitator to assess underpinning knowledge and application of practical skills. And here are going to look at tools that you can use like oral questioning, written questions, and the observation checklist. So, depending on assessment context, there are various techniques that you can use or employ during collection of evidence. So, basically, you are able to summarize the three assessment contexts on which method you can employ and why, and which tool you need for each type of assessment method. Brings me, what are the rules of evidence? What guides collection of evidence? So one is evidence need to be sufficient. And here you're saying that the performance criteria, elements, and the evidence guide, all those components need to be addressed. And you are saying that all dimension of competencies need to be addressed. And CBET says that you need to assess at least all performance criteria. So that's what we talk about. One rule of evidence that they need to be sufficient. Number two is the evidence need to be current. And what do we mean by current here? We are saying that the evidence that you collect need to demonstrate the candidate's recent knowledge and skill. So it's very important you look at that point. That the evidence portrays recent knowledge and skills. So therefore your evidence need to be current. The other bit is the evidence need to be authentic. And here I say that your evidence uh, needs to be verified, that the evidence is the candidate's real own work. So it's very important that the evidence you collect should portray the candidate's performance. And the last bit is the evidence need to be valid. And here it says that the evidence must be relevant to the competency being assessed. And therefore, it must measure what is intended to measure. So that's what we talk about validity. So in other words, you're saying that the evidence must be a good indicator of the learner's ability to perform a task. So basically, these are rules of evidence that we need to abide with when you're collecting this evidence. So anytime you're conducting assessment, ensure that you abide by the rules of evidence. And you're going to see where you are going to apply all these evidence. So they need to be sufficient, need to be current, they need to be authentic, and they should be valid. So in our next video, you're going to look at assessment tool design, and you will be focusing on what are the assessment support materials that we need, from occupational standard to our curriculum to performance criteria weighting, assessment requirements, assessment plan. You also be looking at the candidate tools that we need to develop. So thank you for supporting the channel. Let's subscribe, let's share this video, and also let's comment. Thank you.